Good morning, everyone. I'm going to see if I can grab some people to join us here. Hold on a second. Let's just wait 1 second. There's a few places. Let's see what we got here. I'm at the airport. Copy. Let's see if anybody joins in. Let's see what we got. And we also want to go to, let's see where this is. Oh, there it is. I want to keep on checking on the actual event. I'm just waiting for people to join in. Let's join us in here. I'm at the Las Vegas airport waiting for, let's see, making a few settings. Sure, that looks good. I'm not actually sure if I'm getting audio through the actual laptop or through the iPhone microphone. I'm not sure which one it is. Let's see what we got. If anybody's joined in yet. Not yet. So I arrived in Las Vegas on Sunday. Started early Monday morning, NAB. 3 days. Every day at the end of the day, I was very tired. Most of us were. It just wears on you, all the walking you have to do. Let's see if anybody joins in. I'll post it to a few more groups. Let's see.
May I have your attention, please? Agent Charlotte Chisholm. Please report to the CIA security checkpoint to identify and claim your property. Agent Charlotte Chisholm, please report to the CIA security checkpoint to identify and claim your property.
Let's see if anybody joins in. I'm not sure if anybody's even awake this time in the morning. It's 7:47 Las Vegas time, but East Coast time, where I'm from, it is 10:47. So I'll be headed back to East Coast shortly. Let's see. If any of you want to watch, if any of you want to join in, let me know. Send in a message and I'll post the link on YouTube. Timothy says, "Are you in Vegas?" Yes, I'm in Vegas. Very blue skies. Yeah, absolutely. Just got finished NAB, getting ready for the plane to take off. I'm trying to get some people to join us here in the chat. We'll see if anybody joins. A lot of times people say they want to join, then they don't join when it actually goes live. So can you hear me okay in the chat? Everybody here okay? Want to join in? I'm posting the link. See if we get any co-patriots here. 3 viewers so far. I know there was stuff going on last night. There was a party, and I didn't make it to the party because I didn't get transportation worked out to get to and from, and I had an early flight this morning, so I didn't get to the party. I was actually in bed about 8:30 last night. Let's see if anybody joins in. So the big things, of course, for NAB was Final Cut Pro. The team, they announced the update on last Thursday. And at the FCP exchange, they demoed the 2 of the main features, which were adding captions to video and ProRes RAW, which seems to be the best deal. ProRes RAW seems to be very big. Well, there's Alex.
Doopy.
At least his icons there.
Hello.
Good morning, Alex. What time is it where you are?
It is 10 to 4 in the afternoon.
Wow. What a time difference. I thought it was bad from the East Coast, but it's really bad from Vegas then, because it's like 7:50 here.
So I stayed up until 1 in the morning to see if anything was going to happen at the FCP exchange, and then up until 2, and then there was no reports of anything apart from your single tweet about something we already knew, and that was it.
Yeah, last year, I don't know if you remember, I was streaming it live, not the stuff that's proprietary, but just the Apple presentation. And this year, I was told through the grapevine before the event that they don't want me to stream live or do any video recording. They said stills are okay, some still photographs are okay, but so, and then they announced it there as well, no videotaping, no audio taping. And the way it was explained to me is that it's not set up for video. It's really dark. The presenters are not in light, and the audio is very echoey, and they didn't want to present as Apple in that condition, so they didn't want any video audio. But they just went over the same, the 2 main things, app captions and the ProRes RAW, which seems to be a pretty big deal. What do you think about that, the ProRes RAW?
I do think it's interesting. I think, as I've said, I think it's interesting that ProRes RAW product manager is the same product manager as Final Cut Pro 10. So I think it's not a coincidence. It's not too much of a surprise that ProRes RAW initially only works in Final Cut Pro 10. I think the idea is that they maybe want people to test workflows in Final Cut Pro 10 just to see what ProRes RAW is like, and then just to have a kind of random test, and they actually get to like it. So it gives people a chance to sample Final Cut Pro 10 all over again. But as it is, I think it's great. I mean, the fact that essentially ProRes RAW is saying, look, we've got fast enough GPUs in all recent computers to make it so that effectively, instead of using the same kind of power that would do ProRes 442,
Right.
And it's using the same same kind of processes. You just put a different algorithm in them, and then they can actually debayer and deal with 4K, 5K, whatever resolution, whatever any bits, and just do it all in real time. So it's actually a demo, I think, of Metal 2 and of that kind of stuff on the OS. And it's like, okay, let's actually, now that we can design the codec, because we know that the algorithm can be designed in a different way from modern GPUs, because the red code is 10, 12 years old, the algorithm. So that's why, you know, Cinema DNG is not designed for real-time composition. It's designed for people to stick into a load of nodes in something like Nuke, or it's designed to be, you know, to still every single thing that comes right off the sensor. So I think ProRes RAW is going to be really interesting for shaking things up in a funny sort of way. Yeah.
So do you ever work in a raw format, a workflow yourself?
No, I haven't done it in years. I used to do some drama short films for the British Film Institute and stuff like that, but that was 10 years ago. So that was just a straightforward red workflow. So I just did everything in, you know, ProRes, and then later on somebody in Resolve stuck it all together and reconformed it. But it just took a couple of hours then to just recreate the timeline and stick it all in. So I had to know about it, and I remember, you know, 2006, 2007, when it was like, okay, get these 18 different bits of software made by people that are free, by lots of enthusiastic amateurs, and so you can get it to work together. So
exactly,
I think it's really interesting that Blackmagic Design are opening a developer website and a special place for developers on blackmagic.com or whatever it's called, which means that essentially I think they're trying to maybe see if they can get that kind of feeling for Red, that essentially, hey, you're an individual, you're quite an enthusiastic amateur, you know a little bit about coding, but you also know about workflow. Hey, work with our hardware, work with our software, create some shareware. Hey, we'll help you. You know, so maybe they're trying to get that Red ecosystem thing going for what they do. So I think that's interesting too.
Well, what's interesting, exactly what you're talking about. So Blackmagic had a booth that was the size of a city block at NAB, of course. However, they had a separate booth that was further down towards the Faster Together stage that was just Blackmagic developer booth. So I thought that was curious. So that, you know, so I said, well, they got two booths, but the one was just for developers.
Yeah, no, that shows that they can have a different kind of people talking to them, and they can have the real people that actually know their stuff talking to developers. So that's really good. So somebody can walk right up to them and say, hey, I've got a question about this, and then they can make sure the people at the booth are actually the kind of people that can answer developer questions. Because as you and I know, when you go to events like this, you don't really expect the booth people to actually know anything, because why would they? You know, because they can answer 95%. They can answer 95% of people's questions anyway with a script and a little bit of information, and they don't want smart Alex like me going around showing off that I know more than they do. And I might not even know that, but I might think that I do. So that's a total waste of everybody's time. So I think it's interesting to have a separate booth. And I think, what could people be doing with Blackmagic hardware and software and making, you know, I guess maybe there'll be an app store built into Resolve 16 or something like that. Who knows? In which you can instantly buy stuff.
Well, what did you think about the new Resolve, the beta? I mean,
I haven't downloaded it myself, but I think it's great. You know, I think as I've been saying for a couple of years, Resolve is going to win the battle to be the winner of the previous generation of NLEs. Hooray!
It absolutely, yeah, exactly.
So I think what will happen is that Avid essentially have done enough to make sure that people don't drift away. So, you know, the new Medium Composer, they've got their live timeline and a few other bits and pieces, although they're scaring people by saying, well, they're totally new UI later this year, but we're not going to show it to you yet because we're really scared. But in other words, I think Avid people are not going to drift away to Adobe, so that's fine. Adobe's quite interesting. They're kind of doing stuff to say, hey, we don't really care as much about getting new people involved. We just want to establish the fact that we do actually care about stability a bit. So I get the impression for the current update, it's about like saying, look, we've got a nice list of new features, but isn't it cool actually that we're not doing so many new features and we're actually making it a little bit more reliable? I mean, that's the most positive way I can put what, you know, Premiere and After Effects are doing. But I don't think many more Avid people are going to go to them, and etc.
No, I don't expect them to either. So it seems like to me, that Resolve is really, it really targets Premiere users, it seems like.
Oh, yeah,
It certainly
absolutely.
doesn't, yeah, not Final Cut users, and I don't think Avid users as much. It seems like Premiere is the main people that have to be worried about Resolve, and that's a big worry because you can use the free version, which is fantastic, and it's only $300, no subscription for the full version.
Yeah, I mean, these days when I characterize Adobe and Blackmagic, they're a bit like Microsoft and Google. So essentially,
Right.
Adobe is like Microsoft saying, you know what Microsoft really had is they had their file format. They had two things. They had Windows, which everything was on.
Right.
And they also had the Office file formats. So the Office file formats are going to be totally fine. So that's why Creative Cloud is not a very open system. It's quite walled gardenish. There's no XML to get in and out of it for other tools to be able to do things with actual content of files from Adobe's CC apps. And then Resolve is like the Google to them. So let's make it like a mobile operating system. So it's like, okay, we've got Windows for mobile, and then we've got Android. And Google could release Android, and it's just free. Because they make money elsewhere, they're an advertising company. And also in the case of Blackmagic, they're a hardware company. So they're selling new devices that cost $100 or $200, and they're probably making $150 on each of those because they're so cheap to make, but they're really good value. So they're actually talking about things. The Blackmagic at their conferences are the cheapest products at NAB. And they're going to make huge profits out of them. So imagine competing, if Adobe's competing with that. I mean, obviously they've got other, Adobe essentially have got many other apps that are supporting their video editing tools.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So you've got number one is Photoshop, and then number two is InDesign, and number three is Illustrator, number four is Acrobat, number five is probably Lightroom. And then
what about After Effects? Yeah.
Oh well, exactly. But then it's like Premiere. So let's say there's 10 million people using Creative Cloud. Surely there must be only about 10% of the using Premiere and about 3% using After Effects. I mean, why would it be any more than that out of 10 million people? I mean, that's still a lot of people. That's fantastic. But how important is After Effects to Creative Cloud? Why would it? I mean, essentially, imagine if somebody's After Effects team was saying, hey, could we actually do could we delay the release of the next version of Creative Cloud because we've just got this thing we haven't got it quite working yet? And then Photoshop people going,
right,
no, it's June. It's always June. We control it. That's what everybody expects. Good luck.
No, you're absolutely right. Whenever I hear people talk about the Creative Cloud, they always mention Photoshop number one, but they mention After Effects as the second reason. Premiere, they usually don't mention. It's certainly not the primary reason they got the subscription. So, because I mean, After Effects is still pretty well embedded in the industry.
Oh yeah, no, essentially for what it does is absolutely, it's the IBM of messing about with bits of graphics. Nobody ever got fired for using After Effects. Nobody ever questions using it.
Right.
I think Fusion is quite far away, or the Fusion part of Resolve is quite far away from competing with After Effects in practice. We can joke about it. But just because Fusion can do more than After Effects doesn't mean that people who use After Effects will go to it. It has to be twice or three times as good for somebody to switch. It can't be just a little bit better. It can't be 25% better. It has to be twice as good. So we'll see what happens to Resolve in future. Fusion Resolve, or the Fusion part of Resolve. And then maybe, I think what will happen is that maybe After Effects people will temporarily use Fusion to solve hard problems temporarily. Just pop it over into Fusion in Resolve, and then that solved that problem. And then they'll find in more and more projects they're using Resolve and Fusion to actually solve problems in After Effects. And, yeah, there you go.
So from the outside, what did you find attractive or interesting for NAB besides the Apple stuff, besides Final Cut Pro?
I don't know. I've only been to NAB once, and I certainly find it a lot easier to get around, a lot easier to get my head around than IBC, which is like 14 halls and just narrow corridors between them. You have to go through the corridors to get between the halls.
Wow.
So it's probably a similar kind of floor space, but as it's made of 14 halls, they're all connected only. Like hall 7 is connected only to 2 other halls. You've actually got to go through lots of halls in which there's lots of stuff you're not interested in. So NAB is much more, although huge, is much more straightforward in that respect. I don't know.
What
I mean,
about
obviously, yeah, people are talking about, I guess, AI and cloud services and all that kind of stuff. I'm not particularly interested in hearing people not know about what's going to happen and all those things. I think
Right.
Avid have got quite a good story when it comes to cloud stuff, because they've used to have cloud stuff. They used to. What happens is subscription services companies said, okay, everyone's talking about cloud. Okay, we'll call subscription services cloud services. But they're not. But let's just call them that anyway, because that actually
Sure,
people will
absolutely.
be able to ticked off the box to say, I guess we've got to handle the cloud yet. Oh look, it's called Creative Cloud. Oh, it's cloud subscription. Okay, it looks like we're on the cloud. So I think Avid have been quite canny with all that. Although I don't know how it's actually going to affect their wider ecosystem, because obviously Avid are really good at making sure their third-party partners can make money. And then those third-party partners go to all the studios and said, keep using us, like daily services, which I would think are pretty pointless things. But hey, if you've got a big dailies company, you can make lots of money out of creating bins for Avid people, then why not keep on doing it? And I know you'll want to keep on doing it, but maybe with people directly going to Avid to do their fulfillment and get their services directly from Avid, then I don't know if it's going to irritate some of the people who are actually making money out of supplying Avid. So I don't know. That may change things politically. I mean, Apple don't care about other people making money out of selling Final Cut, which is, I think, a bit of a problem. Whereas Adobe obviously are trying to, I guess, follow the Avid, get third parties to understand it so they can sell it for us thing. But the rest of NAB, I haven't been following it really very much. All I know is that they're likely to be talking about AI and everything all being done by edited or all done in post by AI, which is all pretty silly, really.
So one of the interesting things that when the Final Cut Pro team announced at the FCP exchange, one of the things they emphasized this time, which I don't recall them ever doing, it's still free. The update is still free, and I don't ever recall them emphasizing that before. So that was an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe they're pointing out the fact that Avid is going down to actually and now beating Adobe Premiere on price, which I think is interesting. It's good, and also Avid do offer perpetual licenses, which is good as well. So I think Avid are taking the best of the subscriptions for themselves, and the best for themselves is that they continue making money, but they also provide some options so people don't like the way subscriptions work. So obviously, if you stop updating your copy of Avid, it doesn't mean you don't have access to the old versions of your projects like Adobe have to do.
Exactly.
That kind of lock-in.
People, they don't realize that you have to pay the rest of your life with Adobe. You know, when you're 90 years old and you're just editing once in a while, if you want to edit, you got to keep paying. There's no way out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. And I think, what we want as Final Cut Pro users is Apple to get some feeling of competition. Like they don't seem to act that much like they're being competed against, apart from maybe a little bit encouraging third-party application people to actually work more closely with Final Cut. So these launches of the Vimeo thing, Frame.io, all these kind of things, it's more like they're going, hey, people, I think they're realizing that people like the integration of, in the HTML-based windows inside Premiere. They kind of go, wow, it's so easy for a developer to add their UI to Premiere, whereas Apple are never going to allow that because they don't like their UI being sullied by anybody else. But I think it's good how they're supporting third-party developers a little bit more, or encouraging them to give enough hooks in there, which has probably been a year and a bit coming, because obviously XML was much better integrated in Final Cut Pro 3 in terms of you just drop an XML into something and then it becomes a bit of a live link to it. You could keep on doing it, but it actually takes obviously a year and a bit for people to really start working out what that workflow actually means. But yeah, I just like the idea of Apple acting like they've got some competition, and it's not really happening yet. So I kind of, and I like how it's quite nice how Blackmagic seem to be slightly less friendly to Apple at the moment, a little bit. Otherwise, they're not really saying, okay, they're not carving up the market like they used to, which is like Brazil saying, okay, we'll go after all your competition, Apple, and this make lots of money out of them. And Apple, you get all the YouTubers and everybody else. And now it's like, oh, you seem to be promoting AGA to do HDR. Oh, you seem to be promoting Atomos to do ProRes RAW.
Right.
We make money out of those things, Apple.
Yeah.
What are you doing what are you doing to us? Come on, And
Atomos has been working for 18 months with Apple on this.
Yeah, and then Resolve 15 can't take the Final Cut Pro XML that comes with Final Cut Pro 10.4.1. It just can't actually take any of them in theory. I think editing your XML to probably fix that problem. but that's an interesting little problem right there, So I like the fact. I think it's actually good that Blackmagic and Apple aren't necessarily kind of carving up the market between them. And if they start competing with each other, then Final Cut gets better.
Right. So did Motion get updated besides just the ProRes RAW? Did they get updated? Anything big?
No, there was just bug fixes and ProRes RAW. Had to add a bullet point, which I think probably is saying the fact that it's a little bit more real time than it was. Effectively, Motion is so fast and so good at that sort of thing anyway that effectively they're probably saying, well, some of our stuff is Metal 2 accelerated, but they obviously users and lots of Motion users don't really know what Metal 2 is in terms of how it fits into the Mac OS.
Right.
So I think what's really cool about I was really irritated, or it's really frustrating, or it's really inconvenient to have to upgrade my Mac to Mac OS High Sierra 10.13, because I actually had to do it on the day as soon as I discovered it, and it took me 7 hours to back up my main machine. And of course, everybody started downloading and using the first version.
Wow.
So I kind of had to wait to let everybody else play with it, because I didn't use Final Cut Pro 10.4.1 until the day after, because it took so long to back up the machine that I would do it on. But the fact that now essentially Final Cut Pro 10 can be 6 or 8 months ahead of where it would normally be, because effectively you can't add features to macOS that are required. Sorry, to Final Cut Pro 10 that are based on features of macOS, the current macOS. You couldn't used to be able to do it because essentially you had to have Final Cut Pro 10 to work on the previous version of macOS. So I was watching WWDC streams last summer, thinking, well, that means in December 2018 we'll have the features that are supported by the new versions of macOS. In other words, you have to wait until so they're talking about what's new in 10.13. You have to wait for 10.14 to come out before you can then have the features that 10.13, Final Cut Pro 10 has to rely on the 1.5-year-old Mac OS. But now it's like, okay, no, we can't wait. We want to use features in Mac OS that we've introduced recently in future versions of Final Cut Pro 10, which is, I think, really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So Michael Cioni, of course, his session at Faster Together was just completely packed. And I think that LumaForge is really pushing to get that one out quickly. So that I would be surprised if it's not out today or tomorrow. Of course, everybody, as you can imagine, is super, super tired from that. They get there at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, and they stay late. And then today I think they got to tear down everything. So.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to hearing what he said. I mean, obviously, I think he encourages people to stand up for themselves and create bit of a force in order to change things for themselves, and not just be spoon-fed what they're given by the big A's, I guess, A and the B's.
Right.
So
he talked about 8K and the reality of it, and boy, he mathematically showed how when we went from SD to HD and HD to 4K, and this is exactly the same algorithm, the steps are exactly the same all the way through this process for the last 10 years. And he goes, 8K is going to be here. It's not going to be a problem. People that are complaining about it, their complaints are not valid. And he showed it mathematically why it's not. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
so,
I'm looking forward
to be tomorrow, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I've been playing around with 8K quite a lot because I'm doing 360 video, because you need 8K in order to get a nice HD or slightly better than HD in your head-up display. So 8K, 10K, 12K is what I've been experimenting with. And even my 2016 MacBook Pro is able to do something with those things. I mean, it's a bit slow and you have to mess about with it a bit.
Right,
but yeah, right. I mean, I was totally cynical. I think obviously people can't really see much more than the difference with HD, especially HD to 4K is stupid because the resolution isn't an effective difference. It's not enough of a jump compared to the SD to HD jump. But if somebody, I wish somebody said UHD. My favorite flavor of UHD would be 1920 by 1080, but with 12 bits per pixel color, because then you wouldn't need any log or anything like that. You just have all the color you want at HD, and that's perfectly. It's more than almost any film or any other format up till now would be able to do. But fine, I understand the hyper PR required for dimming screens that are, because essentially the future is not necessarily 8K in of itself. It's more the video with depth maps built into it. So every stream has got its own depth map, transparency / depth map. So I think that's the future, in which you don't need to key anything anymore, because everything actually has its key built into it when it's captured, which is interesting. So, but some of the stuff that people are doing stuff with 360 video will actually be used in lots of flat production, because you'll just go, oh, we seem to have a depth map of this person being filmed. Say you're in an airport, right, and somebody films you, and you've got a camera that can detect the depth map right behind you. And I can either make that window visible, or everything behind it could be the thing that's invisible and keep into any environment, so I could put you on a planet with dinosaurs. Or I can actually make it so that you can't even see the thing that's about 12 inches behind your head and make that disappear. Because if I've got a depth map knowing it, then there's no green screen required. I know the distance of every pixel from the camera, and then I can do whatever I want with it. So I think 8K may bring that. I mean, obviously, I'm very interested in object-oriented video, and what I mean is, instead of the compositor at the moment, compositor is in the NLE. We still bake everything together in a single file and send it out to people. It used to be the compositor was actually somewhere else, and we actually had to use something like Resolve or something like that to do the online. But now the compositor at least can be done on a computer or on a phone. But eventually the compositor is going to be in the playback device. It's going to be in the phone. It's going to be in the TV. It's going to be on the cinema screen, which means that I'll be able to I send out a movie as a cloud of objects. And then there's aspects of that cloud can be changed. It's been like, oh, let's change the frame rate for halfway through the film, or let's composite it one thing on top of the other at different frame rates, because who cares about frame rates anymore? That's just to deal with the bad compositor in the TV. Frames per second, everything should be its right frames per second. Final Cut doesn't have a problem with that. And there's no inherent frame rate actually in the timeline. What there is just you need it for exporting. So one of the other things they talked about in 10.4.1 is they have new options in the export window or the share window, and you can actually control rolls on and off there, and they actually affect your export. Which up to this point, for 6 years now, you turn a roll on and off, it doesn't affect the export. It's only for playback. Yeah. So they completely switched that around. Have you heard about that? Absolutely. No, I read that in the manual, and it's like it clearly said, it exports the ones that are visible that you've turned on in the timeline index.
Right.
I thought, fine.
It's common sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So essentially, I just like the idea. If enough people don't get what's going on and they call Apple support, saying, I can't get this thing working at the moment, or I keep on getting stuff that rolls exported that I don't want, even though I don't see them on the timeline. And if 200 people call up, and then a load of people go to the Apple store and ask the question, and that starts building up, then it'll go, let's have a different default. So that's really good. Absolutely.
No, that absolutely. The other thing though that's not so good. Now I've only seen one person report this. Is when you select a clip at the end toward the end of a sequence and you delete it, it's going back to that behavior where it deletes a bunch of other clips in the timeline that you can't see. So I've heard one person report that. That was a bug that happened, I think.
It's really weird. It's like a kind of, I'm trying to think what the programming problem is there, and what it is about that last clip, how it's somehow associated with previous clips in some sort of strange way, and what one can do to work around it so that to make it less likely. I suppose if you're about to do something with the last clip on the timeline, it's probably a good idea to leave that project and go to another project and come back again, because maybe that makes the SQL a little bit better, or you quit and then restart. But the main catch, of course, is that you don't know the other clips will be deleted until later, and that's the real horrible bit. So it's a bit like using Final Cut Pro 7, in which you've actually forgot that some clip further down the timeline is actually slid by 15 seconds because it was on a track that you thought was completely empty later on, but you just put that clip later on the timeline, you just put it there temporarily to sort something out. You never put it back to where it's supposed to be. So it's something like it's been shifted 15 seconds so it's on top of somebody's face. So it's really like an old school problem, really, in which something that's not visible in your window, the timeline window, in your non-scrolling timeline window, it's something's happened you don't know, and then 15 minutes later you discovered it's gone, and you can't undo because you've lots of other useful work you've done since then. So no, it's a really bad thing. It comes from Apple. I don't know. I was thinking, yeah, I think it comes from Apple, not the way they test the app. They seem to be changing the way they launch things, so maybe they might start changing the way they test it. Start trusting a few more people. Weirdly enough, you need to trust people who aren't necessarily so busy as to be using it professionally all the time, because they're not going to risk doing beta testing. So finding the right people to test it is an interesting thing, because it seems to me with Final Cut Pro 10.3, in the last three major versions, the last three versions, more bugs seem to be getting in as well as going out, and that shows that their beta program isn't what it could be, maybe.
Well, this is not official, but I did ask some people how many people were on the Final Cut Pro team, and there wasn't an exact number, but they were intimating around 100 or so that are directly involved with that Final Cut in different areas. And then I brought up the fact that, remember they had that tour with Charlie Rose toured the Apple factory one time a couple years ago, and they said they had 700 people working on the Apple iPhone. I said, so 100 really not that many. Now, I realize there has to be an optimal amount. They can't just throw people in the team. It has to be people that are useful. But they said around 100 or so. They said certainly dozens and dozens. So,
well, I mean, if you think about the economics of a developer, let's say a developer costs a good developer costs $500,000 a year, right? Maybe. So imagine if you had 4 developers, that's $2 million a year on developing. Now, it's easy for Apple to justify, if you add 500,000 seats or maybe a little bit more in a year, it's 500,000 times maybe $150 worth of profit. That's certainly fine, in terms of having a team of 100 people working on it. But if you're Avid and you've got 25,000 users or 40,000 users and they're only paying a little bit and you're not getting any new users and people aren't even updating, how many developers can you actually afford to hire to justify making a Media Composer better? 5,
right,
4,
right.
So no wonder that's how their development works. And I think, the Adobe team seems to be large, judging by what they get done. So, I think 100 is reasonable. I mean, that's probably, who knows, totally rounded off the top of my head, 45 developers and then lots of other people who actually help them create the space in which what they can actually do. But 45 people can actually do a lot of developing in a year. So, yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I talked to Philip Hodges a few years ago, and he said you can't just throw people at a project. They have to be utilized properly. They have to be effective. It's not just about the numbers. It's about their talents and what needs to be done.
There was a book called The Mythical Man Month. Do you remember that from the 1970s? It's called The Mythical Man Month. And what it was about, it was somebody actually developed a theory about how adding developers or programmers, because it was in 1970s, a man month as opposed to developer.
Right.
How many developers do you have to add to a project in order to kind of get it back on time? I mean, if it's a late project, what do you do if you add more developers in order to make it not late? And there turned out to be this theory this guy came up with from the Mythical Man Month, is that it used to be like, well, if you've got 100 people spending a year on something, that's 100 man years working on that project. If you've got 200 people working in 6 months, that means it's still the same amount of work can be done. So that was kind of what the theory was in those days. And this guy said this is total rubbish. It turns out adding more people to a late software project makes it later. So this is what he proved. Adding more people to a late project makes it later, which is quite funny.
Yeah. You're right.
Adding people to, it's a bit like saying Apple don't do enough. And that's the thing. We've got bullet point envy to some extent, when it comes to Final Cut Pro 10, because what happens is you see a bullet point from Adobe, and they seem to have added 17. They added an array of 16 points to After Effects. So After Effects and another 16 things to Premiere, and yet it seems to be about like 3 for Final Cut Pro 10. But the difference is that Final Cut Pro 10 doesn't do things in beta. You implement it to an extent that can be used immediately professionally, and that's how captions are. Whereas to some extent, what Adobe do, and it's a totally reasonable way of doing things, they don't call it doing it in beta like iOS, like Siri on the Mac is in beta. They just say, okay, we've got this new master properties thing. Here's a tech note about all the various bugs in it. Good luck. which I think is actually an interesting alternative. You know, you could just say, okay, Apple, with Final Cut Pro 10.4.2, could you implement, say, video noise reduction, for example, but it's in beta. We can't guarantee it, but if it works for you, then why not try it? It's obviously not Apple's policy. It certainly was Adobe's.
Right.
I mean, there's certain features which were introduced, 3 years ago and haven't been really improved since then. And other things are improved all the time. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So the Guru Gathering, that was very, very nice. Of course, Steve Martin was the main culprit. He always said, well, it's all of you. I said, I realize that, but it was really nice I know you're the main organizer for that. And it was really nice, but it was standing room. There was no way to interview anybody or talk to anybody or even really effectively do any filming without having your camera right in somebody's face. So nobody really objected, but I got a really short clip of it I'll put up later just so people get an idea of what it was like. Now, the other thing is you see, I put up a small clip of Brad at the Super Meet. I wanted to show the audience a reaction to him. I put that up. Did you see that?
No, I saw it was there, but I haven't clicked it yet now.
Yeah, I just wanted to show the reaction of the crowd. It was good. It was a good reaction considering it's a mixed crowd. Yeah.
Well,
of course.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
They'll put up their own videos as they, get them organized. The same way with Faster Together. LumaForge, they had a great crew. They had gigantic ceilings. The ceilings must have been 20 foot high, so they could do like proper stage lighting and stuff this time. And they had 2 or 3. I think they had 3 cameras. So they're going to make multi-cams of these, and then they're going to mix them. They got to produce them, and they got to edit them. So it takes a while, but I think they're going to rush out Michael Chioni's because that's probably the most popular. But everybody's like dead tired. I was talking to Sam on Tuesday night. He goes, "I'm just walking dead right now. It's just overwhelming because they get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, set up, test this, test that. They have a problem the day before. They try to fix it, and they had a big crew. Jeffrey Orthwine was there this week.
So there's a little bit of news away from NAB. Because working with Nicholas of FX Factory, he sometimes says don't release new FX Factory plugins at around the same time as NAB because there's too much news. So obviously, Peter released his plugins last week for the kind of glass transitions thing. But today there's a new thing from OSM FCP10X, which turns out to be pronounced awesome or awesome. I didn't realize that OSM FCPX is actually pronounced awesome or awesome.
Yeah, that's Ryan
yes.
Wellborn. Yeah.
Yes. So they're new import plugins for Final Cut Pro 10 to import 3 things that Final Cut Pro 10 can't really handle, which is namely animated GIFs, image sequences, and most importantly, I think for many people, is object-oriented graphics, or how do you call it? Like PDFs and stuff like that, like a PDF import of Final Cut Pro 10. So, pretty interesting, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're getting ready to board here sometime shortly. My plane was delayed for a half hour, but it's still going to arrive on time. So I don't know how that works exactly.
Yeah, it's always a con. What happens is they put the buffer in there, and then 9 times out of 10 they say, "Hey, we've got here to Washington D.C. 10 minutes early, 3 minutes early, 1 second early," and you just go, "Yeah, bullshit."
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what certificate you have for your broadcast, so I won't swear. It's a bit silly.
So one of the things that I learned, I'm not a big fan of traveling in the airports anymore, so I go twice a year, but the best thing to do is download Netflix movies, which is what I've done, or Netflix TV series, and just watch them continuously. On the way over, I downloaded the new season of Better Call Saul, that spinoff from Breaking Bad, The Lawyer. It's actually like a prequel because people that were killed in Breaking Bad are now alive in Better Call Saul. So,
no, I've seen it. I actually when I came over on BA, I saw a couple of years ago, probably maybe for NAB in 2016. I managed to time it perfectly, and I saw the whole season on British Airways. So that as the actual wheels hit the tarmac, the closing credits came on episode 10 of Better Call Saul season 1. I actually think, sacrilege, I think it's better than Breaking Bad because there's more variety into what's happening, and the emotional stories are more complicated. So, so I'm really looking forward to the next season, which hasn't come out here yet.
Yeah, Breaking Bad was a great series, especially toward the end. The last couple of episodes, last couple of seasons, but and I was just, when I first started watching Better Call Saul, I'm thinking this can't be as good, but it's really, really good. It's really, really an excellent, because Mike is back. He was killed in the original series, so this is like a prequel before. In the Chicken Man, he was killed and he's back. So,
yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to the next season. It's really, really good. So anyway, I guess you better leave you to it. I'm sure there'll be lots of more videos from you over the next few days.
Yeah, I filmed the listen, the Faster Together stage was fantastic. I didn't do any filming in there because they're going to put out high quality versions, and I didn't really want to be tied to that room. But I was filmed a lot in the workflow suite, and everybody was there. I mean, Sven was there, the edit guy from YouTube. Steve Martin, of course, was there. Phil Hodgett was there. Serena Catania was there. Of course, the LumaForge people were there. Everybody was stopping in there. That's where they were stopping. Michael Gioni was there after his presentation, talking to people and stuff. So that was the hot spot. So I did a lot of filming in there I'm going to be putting up. But I got to get home first.
I'm really interested to see if they manage to do something like that at IBC, because I'm not sure if they'll do the same thing as they've done in previous years at IBC, which has been great. It's essentially been lots of people we all know there, but essentially has been somewhat preaching to the converted, because it has been the people we all know and not too new people. A few, but I would say the percentage is relatively low, like less than 25% new people and just 75% of people going, haven't seen much Final Cut Pro 10 on the main floor, so I'm going to walk the 20 minutes to this other location, and there's going to be some really cool stuff. So hopefully, who knows what they'll do at IBC, but I certainly...
Well, listen, I talked to Patrick before NAB, and one of the things that he hinted at, it was either him or Sam, that there's going to be other Faster Togethers. He said it's not going to just be at NAB, so they very well could do one at IBC then. It would make sense. Because Fast Together is not just Final Cut Pro. It's Final Cut Pro and a lot of post-production stuff. It's a lot of things.
I think that's the thing about Ronnie, is that once Ronnie Curtin's involved, he's got so many great contacts in Europe for lots of great projects and people to come and talk. What's really interesting about FCP Exchange, well, the interesting thing about Fast Together, of course, is the fact that as Apple don't put any money into it, they can do whatever they want, and they don't have to follow the specific full script of what's really going on. So weirdly enough, the FCPX tour and Fast Together, and the fact that there are kind of slightly different forces behind them actually means there's more variety in them, and it means they'll be more interesting, if you see what I mean, as opposed to it being have to again, to use a religious thing, to pray from the same hymn sheet or something like that. So I think it's really positive that Ronnie is with LumaForge.
Oh, Ronnie was great. It was really good to meet him. The first time I met him in person, he was worn out too, though. Everybody was just completely worn out. So the one thing we didn't talk about that I'm really interested in is that new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K one. Because, once again, Blackmagic sometimes overpromises and takes a long time to deliver. This is not even due until next September, but it records to external SSDs, which is via USB-C, which is really, really interesting. And the other couple of other things, it's 4K. Obviously, it does up to 12 bits if the media card or the hard drive is fast enough. And it does I think it does some kind of RAW. So they haven't announced ProRes RAW yet, but that would be interesting. If that camera for $1,300 does ProRes RAW, and it for me, since I have a GH5 and a GH4, I already have micro four thirds lenses, which it takes. So I wouldn't have to buy a whole new lens kit. For $1,300, it's like a no-brainer. The only thing I don't like about it is the screen doesn't swivel. But for $1,300, and you get a full version of
Resolve
DaVinci. Yeah, full version, the studio version. So
I think it's really cool. I like the idea of them. I think they probably can't politically come out with ProRes RAW immediately at the same time, but technically I don't think there's too much of a problem with it. So they'll obviously, to some extent, they still have to promote the idea of Cinema DNG being the RAW format of choice, because that's partially what their workflows are based on and what Resolve really likes. But at some point, once they've actually paid lip service to saying Cinema DNG is the thing, I think essentially Apple are going to take over the mind share on ProRes RAW to say, why aren't you doing ProRes workflow for, you know?
Well,
and the answer is, well, I don't know. We can't come up with a good reason apart from, yeah, why not? Cool. And I think the problem is it won't work on Windows, and it's going to be hard for it to do it on Linux because of the compositing. It's going to be that much. The algorithm may not, you know, Apple may not license the algorithm to other platforms. So that's going to be interesting. Will ProRes RAW, at least for a year, only work on apps running on Mac OS?
Right.
Because, you know, maybe it relies on Mac OS High Sierra. I mean, it doesn't work on anything older than that, does it?
So some sleuth at the Supermeet said that Adobe had their screen up, and it was I think it was a Q&A or something that it was like live. And like first question was, are you going to support ProRes RAW? That's one of the first questions up there. I didn't see it, but somebody told me they saw that. And the other thing was, so HP was up there, right? They're a main sponsor, which I understand. And they had, this is what I thought, they had the worst presentation of anybody because on the two big screens, they had the script. It was all text of the script. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how can they do this at a place where it's all video and they're doing this? And I found out it was a mistake. They were showing the presenter's script rather than what, you know, they were showing the presenter's side of things rather than the... Yeah, but it was, I'm watching this and I said, why, how can you do this? But they also, I didn't feel that bad for them because they were trashing Mac Pros, which was unnecessary.
They kind of have to. I mean, the Z series has got a bit of mindshare now because essentially people said, everyone knows that they don't want to, everyone knows since 2014, well, I don't want a Mac Pro. What is the PC that I want? So HP just barreled in there and said, okay, let's say ZZZ, the Z series this, the Z series that. Now, even I know, who don't even care about PCs or anything to do with them, they go, I guess, what is the equivalent of the Mac Pro? I guess that Z series thing I keep hearing about. So they've been quite effective on that side of things. But I guess, you know, that's not going to, I imagine that's not going to last. We won't be talking about them in 2020, I don't think, but we'll see.
Well, that's true. The other thing was they had the raffle, and they had they were giving away an HP laptop or something. And I'm saying, if I win this, I'm not going to even, I'm going to give my ticket to somebody else, but I don't even want it.
Well, maybe it'll resolve quite nicely, maybe, I don't know.
Maybe I probably, but I don't have anywhere to put it anyway. I'm like unpacked. So on the way over here, I have all this electronics. I have my GH5, and I have cables, and I have the tripods, and my whole case was filled up with electronics. Well, they tore my bag apart on the way here, completely disassembled it, and they say, here, they took it through another x-ray, and then they gave it to me to reassemble. So this time I put most of my electronics in my overhead bin one, which was easier to get to, and that's the one they tore apart. So that wasn't quite so bad.
So did you win anything in the raffle?
No, I don't even, I just give my tickets away to somebody.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, there's some things, plugins. I mean, plugins I'd like to win certain ones, but I don't want to carry anything back. I'm completely full as it is now.
Yeah, no, I was tempted.
So where can people find your stuff? Where can people find your stuff, your plugins?
Well, alex4d.com. So there's I got lots of free plugins. There's like 14 or 15 ones that I put out a long time ago.
Absolutely.
And then there's also a link to my old WordPress blog from a while ago. It's got another 60 free plugins for Final Cut Pro 10. And it's really weird when I see Apple demos and stuff like that, or Thomas Grove Carter. He's got my adjustment layer or my widescreen mat is actually visible on these demos. And I go,
right.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, alex4d.com. And I'm going to be updating the website soon because I need to update it. So it'll have a whole new look and a new thing. Yeah.
One of my favorite ones of yours that you had is that glass pane, that like semi-transparent glass pane.
Yes.
I'm not sure which. I really, really like that because I use it for all kind of things. You know, background and maybe lower thirds, but I also use it to blur things out. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
I really like that.
As soon as iOS 6 came out, or iOS 7, whenever they introduced that new metaphor, I thought, well, everyone's going to want that. So I thought, why not make it? Because, yeah, I like that aesthetic too. Nice, very thin type with a very big blur behind it. And it can look really classy. And you can get on with telling your story without having to mess about with graphics and things like that. Because, yeah, my audience is editors, not graphic designers. So they can get on the editors.
Gotcha. All right, I guess I'm going to hang this up, and I do want to say thanks to LumaForge who sponsored me to come out here. So they've been great. They take care of stuff, and the Faster Together stage is the best. It was really an upgrade from last year. they had private rooms, but one next door to the other, and it wasn't that hard to find. They had food there close by, the bathrooms were close by and stuff, so very convenient. And it was on the same floor as Black Magic, although they were all the way at the other end, their big booth. Their Black Magic booth is like a city block. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's just gigantic.
No, I mean, well, I hope Lumaforge is somehow going to be at IBC, and I'm
sure they will.
I have to find some way of justifying the trip to NAB next year. I've got to be useful enough to somebody, maybe see if I get some sponsorship too.
Absolutely. All right, Alex. Thanks for coming on.
Cool. Have fun and have a great flight.
Thanks. Talk to you
Cheers.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.